CreepyCorner stories.
Hey everyone, welcome back to CreepyCorner stories. You know, diving into the dark web is always risky, but sharing these stories with you makes it worth it. I'm curious, where are you watching this from right now? Let me know in the comments below. I've noticed that these kinds of stories hit differently depending on where you are. It might even make the experience a little creepier. So, tell me, are you watching from the safety of your home or somewhere less secure? I paid a hacker to recover deleted Hollywood footage. The last frame was a famous actor screaming, "Help me, they cloned me." Alright, I don't usually post on here, but I need to get this out before it's too late. If something happens to me, just know I tried to warn you. I work in cybersecurity. Nothing too crazy. Freelance stuff, mostly for mid-sized companies trying to keep their data safe from hackers. But every once in a while, I take on less legal jobs. You know, deep web clients, people who want things recovered, things erased. I don't ask questions. I just do the job and take the money. I've done some weird shit before. Once, a guy paid me 10 grand to wipe every trace of his name from an old MySpace account. Another time, I had a Russian dude ask me to recover an email that he swore would clear his name. Never found out what that was about. But nothing, and I mean nothing, comes close to what I was hired for last month. It all started with an email. No subject line, no sender name, just one sentence. How much to recover a deleted Hollywood film? Now, at first, I thought it was some newbie filmmaker who accidentally wiped their hard drive. Happens all the time. But something about the email felt off. No greeting, no details, just that one cryptic sentence. I ignored it. Then, a few minutes later, another email came in. Name your price. Attached was a screenshot of a bank transfer page, ready to send me $50,000 up front. Now, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't tempted. I mean, $50,000 just to try and recover a file. That's easy money. So, I replied, depends on the file format, storage medium, and how it was deleted. Almost instantly, I got a response. The footage was erased from every backup. We need it recovered from the dark archive. I had to read that twice. Dark archive? If you're not familiar, let me explain. Every major studio has a dark archive, a private, air-gapped, meaning offline, backup, where they store original footage, raw edits, and anything they never want the public to see. These aren't just backups. They're vaults, locked down tighter than government servers. If footage was deleted from everywhere, including the dark archive, that meant one thing. Someone high up didn't just want this film gone. They wanted it erased from history. That should have been my first red flag. But I was too focused on the money. I sent my Bitcoin wallet address. Within 5 minutes, the money was there. No negotiation, no questions. Then, another email. You'll receive the drive within 24 hours. No sender name, no company info, just that one message. That night, I kept telling myself it was just another job. But in the back of my mind, something felt wrong. I should have walked away. I really, really should have. You ever feel like you just did something that's going to ruin your entire life? That cold, creeping dread in your gut, like you've just stepped into a trap you didn't even know was there. That's how I felt sitting in front of my screen, staring at the lost frame of that corrupted footage. My hands were shaking, and I didn't even notice until I felt my fingers slip off the keyboard. That's when I realized I was gripping the desk so hard, my knuckles had gone white. I don't scare easily. I grew up on crime forums, watching cartel execution videos and deep web snuff clips that were probably fake, but disturbingly realistic. I've seen bodies torn apart, people screaming for their lives, while faceless figures stood behind them with knives. And yet, nothing got under my skin like this, because this wasn't just some cursed video file. This wasn't some horror story made up for shock value. This was real, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching me. I forced myself to breathe, trying to think logically. I wasn't crazy. This was just a job. A bizarre, creepy job, sure. But jobs end. I get paid. I move on. I forget. But my instincts were screaming at me. I didn't know it yet. But this job, it wasn't going to end. Not for me. I played the footage again. This time, I forced myself to look closer. The actor, let's call him M. I won't say his real name, because if I do, this post is getting wiped immediately. But you know him. You've seen his face on a McDonald's commercial, on the side of a bus, on late-night talk shows. A perfect Hollywood success story. But in this footage, he looked destroyed. The first time I watched, I thought he was just tired, maybe sick. But when I slowed it down, frame by frame, I saw details I shouldn't have seen. His skin. It was pale, but not in a normal way. It looked thin, like cheap plastic stretched over a skull. I noticed faint cracks along his jawline, too symmetrical to be wrinkles. His hands. His fingernails were peeling, splitting down the middle, and the skin around them was blackening, not like dirt, but rot, like something was eating away at him from the inside. His teeth. At first, I thought they were chattering, but when I zoomed in, they were shifting, like they didn't fit in his mouth properly. Some were too small, some too big, some filed down like they'd been forcibly reshaped to match someone else's. And then there were his eyes. They were off. The irises looked misaligned, like someone had tried to match the color, but had gotten the proportions just slightly wrong. They were bloodshot, but not the normal kind. There were too many veins, stretching out in unnatural patterns, like something else was growing inside them. He wasn't sick. He wasn't tired. He wasn't human. Or at least, not anymore. I tried checking the file's history, searching for any traces of where it had been recorded, edited, or stored. Whoever deleted this footage, they were good. No timestamps, no location data, just that one set of GPS coordinates buried deep in the metadata. I should have left it alone. I should have closed my laptop, burned the drive, and pretended this never happened. But my brain wouldn't let it go, because the last words M said in that footage, "Help me. They cloned me." What the hell was I supposed to do with that? I ran another recovery scan on the drive, looking for anything that might have been left behind. It took about 20 minutes, but eventually I found something. A second file, locked, encrypted, hidden. I copied it to a secure server, spent the next hour brute forcing my way through its encryption. The deeper I dug, the more uneasy I felt. This wasn't a normal Hollywood archive. The security measures, they weren't built to protect the file. They were built to keep people out, like whoever made this never wanted it to be seen. After some aggressive decryption, I finally cracked it. The file opened, and my stomach dropped. It wasn't another video. It was a list. Names, dates, coordinates. Hundreds of them. I scrolled down. Some names were crossed out in red, terminated. Others were marked in yellow, in progress. I felt my breath hitch when I saw the latest entry. M. Status replaced. My mouth went dry. I scrolled further, and then I saw a name that made my entire body go cold. My name, and next to it, status, processing. I don't remember closing my laptop. I don't remember standing up. All I remember is the sound of my own heartbeat, pounding against my skull like a war drum. They knew who I was. They knew I had the footage. And worst of all, they weren't done yet. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the screen, my body frozen in place. But eventually, my survival instincts kicked in. I grabbed my phone, took a deep breath, and called the only person I trusted, my friend Alex. Alex is one of the best hackers I know. Not the lol I steal Netflix accounts kind, the real kind. The kind who can erase your entire existence off the grid if you pay him enough. The phone rang twice before he picked up. Yo, Alex. My voice came out shaky. I need you to trace something for me. Right now. Okay. What is it? I hesitated. If I told him everything, he might not want to get involved. So I gave him the one thing I knew he wouldn't ignore. I sent him the coordinates. 30 seconds later, he responded. Bro, where the hell did you get this? My stomach tightened. What do you mean? Dude, this place. It's been abandoned for 20 years. But get this. The power's still running. Security cameras. Active servers. Someone's still using it. I felt a shiver run down my spine. And, you might want to sit down for this next part. I didn't. There's a second set of coordinates buried in the metadata. I clenched my jaw. Where? Silence. Then finally, Alex exhaled sharply. Your apartment. I felt my stomach turn to ice. My hands were already shaking when I reached for the nearest object, a knife from my desk, the same one I used to open the package earlier. Then, a knock on my door. Not a normal knock. Slow. Deliberate. Like whoever was on the other side already knew I was there. I didn't move. Then, another knock. And this time, a voice. Not just any voice. My voice. Let me in. The knock came again. Slow. Hollow. Like bone against wood. Then the voice. My voice. Let me in. It was perfect. Same tone. Same inflections. Like an exact copy of how I speak, but empty. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Because some things don't belong in this world. And I knew, deep in my gut, that whatever was standing on the other side of that door wasn't me. Bang. The whole door shook. I flinched, tightening my grip on the knife. My mind was screaming at me to run. But run where? My apartment was on the 4th floor. The only way out was the door, or the window. Then, a second bang. This one was worse, because when the door rattled, I saw something impossible. For just a split second, between the vibrations of impact, the doorframe bent, like something on the other side was pressing against it with inhuman strength. Not pushing, not slamming, pressing, like it was trying to squeeze through. I did the only thing my panic-ridden brain could come up with. I grabbed my laptop, bolted into the bathroom, and locked the door. And then, I made the worst mistake of my life. I turned on my phone's front camera. I needed to see what was out there. I switched to the live security feed from my hallway camera. The image flickered for a second, adjusting to the dim light. Then, I saw it. A man, standing perfectly still in front of my apartment door. And it was me. Same face, same building, same damn hoodie I was wearing right now. But there was something wrong. My face, its face, was twitching. Subtle, but rapid. The corners of its mouth jerked up in tiny, unnatural spasms. Its fingers twitched in the same way, curling and uncurling over and over like it wasn't used to them, and its eyes, wide, unblinking, dead, like a doll wearing human skin. I felt my stomach twist into a knot. This wasn't a person. This wasn't even a clone. This was something else. Something that had put me on like a costume, but hadn't figured out how to wear it yet. Then, it turned its head. Not like a normal person. Number. It snapped, like a broken puppet being yanked by invisible strings, and it looked right at the camera. I froze. It wasn't supposed to see me. It wasn't supposed to know, but somehow it did. Its lips moved. No sound, just the shape of the words, forming in slow, exaggerated movements. You are not supposed to be here. The screen glitched, and then it smiled. Not a real smile, not a human one. The mouth stretched too wide, the lips peeled back, the corners tore, revealing raw, red muscle underneath. The last thing I saw before the feed cut out. It took a step toward the door and lifted its hand. Its fingers curled into a fist. Bang! The whole apartment shook, and then silence. I don't know how long I sat there. 10 minutes, an hour. My body was in full shutdown mode. Then, my phone vibrated. A text from Alex. Get out. Now. I called him. The second he picked up, he was already talking. I don't know what the fuck you got yourself into, man, but this shit is not normal. His voice was shaking. I traced the coordinates. That abandoned studio. It's not abandoned. It's a front. A shell company owns it, but the financial records don't make sense. They're paying for power, water, security, but there's no employees, no film projects, nothing. Just a constant stream of high-profile visitors. I swallowed. Who? Silence. Then, executives, scientists, celebrities. But here's the fucked up part. I heard him typing. Some of them are dead. The room spun. Like, officially dead. Publicly buried. There's obituaries and everything. But I pulled up security footage, and bro, they're still showing up at this place, looking exactly the same as they did before they died. My brain refused to process it. And that's not even the worst part. I didn't respond. I just waited. Then he said it. I found your name on an access list. My heart stopped. You're supposed to be there, dude. They're expecting you. Then, the call cut out. Connection lost. I pulled the phone away from my ear and saw that I had a new text message. No sender. Just a single sentence. Look outside. My stomach clenched. I didn't want to, but I did. I stood up on shaky legs, walked over to the window, and slowly pulled back the curtain, and my heart dropped. A car. Black. Tinted windows. Parked across the street. Not running. Just waiting. Then, the back door opened, and a man stepped out. I barely registered his face before my vision blurred with terror, because he looked exactly like Alex. Down to the hoodie, the nervous expression, the way he looked around, rubbing his hands together, like he wasn't used to the skin he was wearing. Then, he turned and looked directly at me. I don't remember packing. I don't remember grabbing my laptop or my keys. The next thing I knew, I was in my car, tearing down the street at 90 miles an hour, phone buzzing in my lap with more unknown texts, all of them saying the same thing. You are not supposed to be here. I kept driving, didn't stop, didn't think, and now I'm sitting in a cheap motel 5 states away, typing this out with shaking hands. I don't know what to do. I don't know who to trust. But I do know one thing. I saw what I wasn't supposed to see. And they saw me too. And whoever, whatever they are, they're already replacing people. Famous people. Powerful people. And now, they want me. I haven't slept in 2 days. I know they're watching me. I see them at gas stations, in parking lots, standing too still beneath flickering streetlights. They never get close, not yet, but they wait. I checked into this motel under a fake name, paid in cash, ditched my car 3 miles away. It doesn't matter. They still found me. There was a knock at my door last night. Slow, hollow, familiar. 3 taps, then silence. I didn't answer. I didn't move. Eventually they left, but when I checked the security camera feed this morning, there was no one there. Only the door and my own shadow beneath it. But I was inside, alone. I'm starting to think they don't need doors. I spent the last 24 hours tearing through every file I recovered, cross-referencing every name in that list. And what I found, it doesn't just scare me, it's rewriting reality. The people who don't exist. Let's go back to M, the famous actor, the one I found in that lost footage, begging for help, the one who was cloned. He's not the only one. I ran deep searches on the names in the replaced section of that list. Some were actors, others were politicians, CEOs, influencers, people with power. But then, there were people who weren't famous, names that didn't come up in any news articles, any social media records, just blank spaces. It was like they'd been erased. Then I noticed something even worse. The people marked in progress, the ones still alive. I checked their profiles, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. They were all making the same kinds of posts, generic, hollow, like AI-generated personalities wearing human skin. Love this new coffee place. Life is good. Stay positive. Just had the best time with friends. Live, laugh, love. The world is such a beautiful place. Be happy, friend. No real emotions, no depth, just placeholders. And then, some of them started replying to me. People I'd never spoken to before. People I was investigating. Hey, hope you're having a great day. Life's too short to worry, friend. Stay happy. Like they knew I was watching, like they were mocking me. I blocked them all, but new ones kept appearing. I went back to the list, checking for any new entries. My name was still there, but the status had changed. Final processing. They have a plan. I don't know who they are. Government, corporations, something older, deeper. I don't know, but they're doing something to people. They aren't just cloning celebrities. They're replacing anyone they want. They make a copy. The original vanishes. The copy takes their place. And nobody notices. Because the copy looks perfect, speaks perfectly, remembers everything, except one thing. It's not real. And sometimes, if you look closely, you can see the mistakes. A scar that used to be there, gone overnight. A voice that sounds just a little too crisp. Eyes that don't quite reflect light the way they should. But by the time you notice, it's already too late. They tried to erase me, but I didn't die. I think Alex was right. I think they meant to replace me, but something went wrong. Maybe I wasn't important enough for them to do it carefully. Maybe my clone was already out there, and they assumed the original had been taken care of. But I survived, and now they know. I think that's why they sent it. The thing that knocked on my door. It wasn't here to kill me. It was here to see what was left of me, to learn, to watch, to study the imperfections in its own design. There was another video. I almost missed it. Buried deep inside the encrypted files, under layers of corrupted data. But it was there. A second piece of footage. I opened it. At first it looked normal. A corporate-looking room. A long metal table. Bright, sterile lights overhead. And a man, strapped to a chair. M again. The real one. Not the one on TV. not the one smiling at red carpet events. The original. He was screaming, not words, just raw, animalistic terror. His head snapped back, veins bulging from his neck, his entire body straining against the restraints so hard his wrists were bleeding. Then, a door opened. Something stepped inside. I swear to God, I have never seen anything like it. It looked human at first. The right shape, the right number of limbs. But the skin was too smooth, like molded silicone, stretched taut over muscle that wasn't quite shaped correctly. Its movements were wrong, too fluid, too controlled. And the face, it had no eyes, just smooth, empty skin where they should have been. But it smiled, a slow, twisting grin that spread too wide. It raised one hand, and I saw the fingers, longer than they should have been, tapering into something that looked soft and flexible, like unfinished clay. M was still screaming. Then the thing touched his face, and I watched as his skin rippled, like liquid, like it was being rewritten in real time. His mouth contorted, stretching, snapping back into place, his cheekbones shifting, his nose reshaping itself. And all the while, he kept screaming, until his voice changed, until it matched the thing standing over him, until it wasn't his voice anymore. The new him opened its eyes. They were wrong. Too clear, too bright. It blinked once, then smiled, and the thing that had made him stepped back into the shadows. The restraints unlocked, and the new M stood up, fixed his suit, straightened his tie, and walked out of the room, like nothing had happened, like he had always been that way. The video ended, and I sat there, cold, paralyzed, knowing this had already happened to me. It's already here. I don't know how long I have left, but I do know this. I won't let them take me again. I won't let them erase me. And if I see it again, the thing that wears my face, I won't run. This time, I'll kill it first, before it finishes becoming me. I don't know if this will be my last entry, but if I disappear after this, if you never hear from me again, know that I tried. Know that I fought, and know that the thing wearing my skin is not me. They are finishing the replacement. I can feel it now, a weight pressing against my skull, a static hum, too deep to hear, but always there, at the edge of my senses, a presence that wasn't there before, whispering in the silence. I'm breaking apart. I don't know if it's paranoia, sleep deprivation, or if something is rewriting me from the inside out, but I feel it. A cold, crawling sensation beneath my skin, like something else is growing, like something else is waiting. And if I stop fighting, if I give in, even for a second, I won't be me anymore. I found the facility. I shouldn't have gone. I should have taken what I found and disappeared. I should have let the world keep its secrets, let the lies continue. But I had to see it. I had to know. I drove through the night, headlights off, following the coordinates buried in the footage, past empty highways, abandoned motels, streets that had no names, and finally, the place where they make us, a facility buried beneath an old decommissioned film studio. From the outside, it looked abandoned, rusted gates, broken windows, a sign that said, "Do not enter." But inside, the power was still running. I slipped through the entrance, moving carefully, my footsteps swallowed by the thick silence. The air smelled wrong, sterile, artificial, like a hospital that had never been touched by human hands. And the deeper I went, the colder it got. Then I saw the rooms, hundreds of them, lined up in perfect rows, each with a reinforced glass window, and inside, them, lined up on metal slabs, unfinished copies, Some twitched, their limbs jerking unnaturally, mouths opening and closing soundlessly. Their skin was translucent, features half-formed, like wax figures that had started to melt. Others were further along. They looked human, almost, but their eyes were wrong, too bright, too perfect. Some were awake, and they were watching me. I heard the sound of something clicking, slow, rhythmic, inhuman. I turned, and there, in the dim light, rows of them, standing upright, not in the rooms, not behind the glass, but in the hallway, waiting, still. Their mouths were stretched into two wide grins, and they were all looking at me. They know I'm here. The lights flickered. Then the whispering started. Software, almost gentle, but wrong. It wasn't voices, it was mine. Dozens, hundreds, thousands of voices, all mine, layered over each other, speaking, laughing, crying. And then, one of them moved, not fast, not aggressively. It just stepped forward. A perfect copy of me. Same face, same height, same scars, but its mouth was still open, and it was smiling. Then it spoke, in my voice. You shouldn't have come here. I ran. I don't even remember turning. I just ran, blindly, through hallways that stretched too long, corridors that twisted back into themselves. I could hear them following, not running, just walking, like they knew I had nowhere to go, like they knew I was already theirs. They let me see what happens next. I must have blacked out, because when I opened my eyes, I was in a different room. Bright, too bright. I tried to move, but I couldn't. Straps held me down, tight, cutting into my wrists and ankles. A figure stood above me, not one of the clones, something else, something older. Its face was smooth, blank, featureless except for a mouth. And when it spoke, its voice wasn't one voice. It was thousands, echoing, layered, not human. You're not supposed to exist. I tried to scream, but something was pressing against my mind, a crushing, suffocating pressure. You were a mistake. I could feel my body changing, my fingers twitching, my bones shifting. I knew then what had happened. They had made my replacement, and they had meant to erase me. But something had gone wrong, and now they were finishing the job, the lost version of me. I don't know how long I was in that room. Minutes, hours, days. I lost track of time, lost track of myself. The pain became distant, fading. I could feel something pulling me apart, breaking me down piece by piece, rewriting my existence. And I realized that's what they do. They don't just copy you. They replace you. They wear your face, your memories, your life, and they erase the original, completely. I fought. I tried to hold on, but it wasn't enough. I was slipping, falling into something dark. And then I saw it, the new me, standing in the doorway, watching, its expression empty, cold. Then, slowly, it smiled, and I knew. It wasn't just a copy. It was better. A perfected version, free of flaws, free of fear. And I was nothing. Just another failed version. Just another body waiting to be erased. The last thing I remember is my own face, staring down at me, unblinking, unsmiling, perfect. And then, nothing. They walk among you. I don't know how I'm writing this. I don't know if I escaped, if I survived, if I ever really existed at all. All I know is this. If you ever see yourself, run. Because if you don't, you won't be you for much longer. And nobody will ever know the difference. Because the thing that replaces you, it will be perfect. And you'll be forgotten. Like you were never there at all. I paid a dark web investigator to look into my hometown. The report said, "You are the only real person. There. Alright, so I know how this sounds. Trust me, I thought it was a joke too. But after what I've seen, what I've experienced, I don't even know what's real anymore. I should start from the beginning. I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin. Let's call it Ravenswood. One of those places you'd never hear about unless you lived there. You know the type. A few gas stations, a McDonald's that doubled as the local hangout, and a Walmart that somehow felt like the town square. Everyone knew each other, or at least they acted like they did, and yet I always felt like something was off. You ever get that feeling like people around you are just going through the motions, like they're running on autopilot? That was my town. People followed routines so strictly, it was eerie. Mrs. Caldwell at the post office always asked the same 3 questions, word for word, every single time I saw her. The cashier at the 7-Eleven rang up my order with the same exact expression, same exact tone, no matter the day or time. And then there were the disappearances. No one talked about them, but I noticed. Kids I went to school with, people I'd seen at the grocery store, gone. Sometimes a family would just vanish overnight. Their house would sit empty for a while. Then a new family would move in, and it was like the old ones had never existed. No memorials, no for sale signs, just erased. I tried bringing it up once at school. My best friend Tyler just laughed and told me I was watching too many YouTube horror videos. My parents, they brushed it off, said people move all the time. But something wasn't right. Then, last year, I left for college in Chicago. First time being away from home, and suddenly, I felt normal. People had energy. They had real conversations. They didn't just stare blankly when I asked something off script. That's when I got obsessed with figuring out what was wrong with Ravenswood. So, one night, after falling down a rabbit hole of Reddit conspiracy threads and YouTube deep dive videos, I stumbled onto a post about dark web investigators. You know, the kind of people you pay to dig up stuff that isn't supposed to be found. Most of the services were sketchy as hell, but one site stood out. It was called Omnisite Investigations. There were no ads, no flashy graphics, just a plain black page with a single text box. Enter query. I hesitated. Then, on a whim, I typed, "What's wrong with Ravenswood, Wisconsin?" A loading icon spun for a few seconds before another text box appeared. Inquiry accepted. Processing. No payment request. No confirmation email. Just that. I left the tab open, expecting nothing. But then, at exactly 3:33 a.m., my laptop screen flickered. A new message appeared. Report ready. Open at your own risk. My heart was pounding as I clicked the link. The document was simple, just plain text on a white background. But as I read, my stomach dropped. It started with a basic rundown of the town's history, census records, missing persons reports. But then, near the bottom, one sentence sent chills down my spine. Subject is the only verified human resident of Ravenswood. I stared at those words for what felt like forever. Only verified human. I scrolled down. There was more. A log of surveillance footage analysis, biometric inconsistencies, non-human behavioral patterns in residents. The report claimed that over 90% of the town's population didn't register as biologically human by any known standard. It even included screenshots of people in town showing subtle distortions in their features, like their eyes weren't aligned properly, or their mouths stretched too wide when they smiled. And then, at the very bottom, the final note: leave immediately. Do not return. They know you know. At that exact moment, my phone buzzed. Unknown caller. I didn't answer, but a voicemail popped up. I hesitated before pressing play. Static. Then, a whispering voice, slow and deliberate. You shouldn't have looked. Then silence. I slammed my laptop shut. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought I was going to pass out. I wasn't stupid. I wasn't about to ignore this. I packed a bag, got into my car, and drove. Didn't tell anyone. Just left. That was 6 months ago. And now, I think they found me. I barely slept after reading that report. Every sound outside my apartment sent me into a panic. Footsteps in the hall, a car door slamming down the street. It all felt like it was meant for me, like someone or something was coming. I left my apartment in Chicago before the sun was even up. No plan, no destination, just my car, a backpack, and the overwhelming urge to run. But you know what's messed up? No matter how far I drove, I kept feeling this pull back toward Ravenswood. It wasn't logical. I knew that. The report told me to never go back. My gut told me the same thing. And yet, my hands were gripping the wheel so tight, my knuckles turned white. And before I even realized what I was doing, I was heading home. The return. I crossed into town just after midnight. It should have been dead silent. Small towns don't have nightlife. No late-night traffic. No bars spilling people into the streets. Just darkness and the occasional flickering street lamp. But Ravenswood wasn't quiet. I didn't see a single car, but I heard things. A deep hum in the air, so low I felt it in my ribs. Static buzzing from streetlights. And something else, something that made my skin crawl. Laughter. Not normal laughter. This was wrong. Stretched out, distorted. It echoed from alleyways, from darkened windows, from the empty parking lot of the McDonald's where I used to get fries after school. I turned onto my parents' street. Every house was dark, except for theirs. The upstairs light was on, casting a sickly yellow glow. They were waiting for me. Something's wrong with my parents. I didn't knock. I just stepped inside. The house smelled off, like damp wood and something metallic. Something that reminded me of the inside of a freezer where raw meat had been sitting too long. Mom? Dad? No answer. I moved toward the living room. The TV was on, but the screen was just static, flickering gray and black. The longer I looked, the more I swore I could see faces shifting in the static, mouths opening and closing like they were trying to speak. Then I heard it. Sweetheart. My mom's voice. She was standing in the kitchen doorway, wearing her usual floral nightgown, but something was wrong with her face. Her eyes were too wide, the whites so bright they almost glowed in the dim light. And her mouth. She was smiling, but it wasn't hers. It was too big. It stretched too far, like someone had taken a knife and slit her cheeks ear to ear. My dad stepped up behind her. His head twitched to the side, like a glitching video. His eyes locked onto mine, and I swear to God, they weren't human. They were black. No whites, no irises, just endless, swallowing darkness. I stepped back. I have to go. Their smiles widened. We missed you, Mom whispered. Her voice was layered, like two people speaking at once. Then, at the exact same time, both of them snapped their heads to the side at an unnatural angle, like their necks had just given out, and they started laughing. That same awful, stretched-out laughter I'd heard in the streets. I ran. The thing in the basement. I don't even remember making it to my car, just that I was suddenly in the driver's seat, hands shaking as I turned the key. But the engine wouldn't start. In the rearview mirror, I saw them standing on the porch, watching me, still smiling. Then, a movement, not from them, from the basement window. Something was down there, something huge. I only saw it for a second, a massive shadow shifting behind the glass. And then, a face, not human. The eyes were hollow pits. The mouth was jagged, torn open in a permanent scream. The skin looked stitched together, like it had been built from pieces of different people. It pressed its hands against the glass, and the window cracked from the force. I slammed my foot on the gas, praying the car would start. For a second, I thought I was screwed. But then, the engine roared to life. I peeled out of the driveway, tires screeching. But as I sped down the street, my heart nearly stopped. Every single house. The doors were open, and people, if you could call them that, were stepping out onto their porches, watching me, smiling. Some of them weren't right. Their faces were stretched, eyes sunken and empty. Some were missing chunks of skin, like something had been tearing them apart and stitching them back together. And the worst part? They all started laughing. That same awful, distorted laughter. I floored it. The final message. I didn't stop until I was miles out of town. Didn't breathe until I saw the city lights in the distance. When I finally pulled into a gas station, I just sat there, hands gripping the wheel so tight they went numb. I checked my phone. New message. No sender. Just 3 words. Come back home. I turned off my phone. I didn't care. I wasn't going back. But then, I saw something in my rearview mirror. A woman, standing under the gas station's fluorescent lights, wearing a floral nightgown, smiling too wide. My mom. I didn't move. I sat there in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingernails dug into the leather. My breathing was uneven, shallow. I could hear my pulse pounding in my ears like a war drum. And outside, standing under the buzzing fluorescent lights of that lonely gas station, was my mother. But it wasn't her. It couldn't be. I had left her. Left that thing that looked like her, back in Ravenswood. Yet here she was, standing perfectly still, her head slightly tilted, that awful, too wide smile carved across her face. Her eyes. God, those eyes. They weren't eyes anymore, just empty, black pits, like someone had hollowed out her skull. The gas station was empty, no clerk, no other cars. Just me, my not-mother, and the buzzing lights. Then she took a step forward. I don't remember making a conscious decision to drive. My body just reacted. I slammed my foot on the gas, my tires screeching against the pavement as I sped the hell out of there. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Nowhere is safe. I drove until the sun came up. My eyes felt like sandpaper, my body running on pure adrenaline. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to be far away. At some point, I pulled into a random motel off the highway. It was the kind of place that smelled like mildew and cigarette smoke. The kind of place where you don't ask questions. I checked in under a fake name. Once inside, I locked the door, bolted it, wedged a chair under the handle. Then I pulled the curtains shut, sat on the bed, and finally let myself breathe. For the first time in hours, I checked my phone. New message. No caller ID. You can't run forever. I dropped the phone like it burned me. Then it buzzed again. I picked it up. A video file. I hesitated. Every instinct in my body screamed, "Don't watch it." I watched it. It was footage of me, walking into my motel room seconds ago. The timestamp was real. The angle was impossible. It was like someone had been right behind me, filming over my shoulder, but I had been alone. I stopped the video. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. Then, another message. This time, just an image, a still frame from the video. But there was something new. A figure standing in the doorway. Something that wasn't there before. My blood ran cold. I looked at the motel door. Locked, bolted, chair still in place. But then, knock, knock. I nearly screamed. The sound was soft, deliberate, like whatever was on the other side knew I was listening. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And then, a voice. "Let me in." It sounded like my dad, but I knew better. I grabbed the motel key, shoved my laptop and phone into my bag, and climbed out the bathroom window. As I ran toward my car, I heard the door to my room creak open. I didn't look back. The town that shouldn't exist. I drove for what felt like hours, mind racing. Nothing made sense. The dark web investigators' report said I was the only real person in Ravenswood. If that was true, what the hell was everyone else? I needed answers, and against every ounce of common sense I had left, I decided to go back. Not into Ravenswood, but close enough. There was an old highway that ran parallel to town, hidden behind a stretch of abandoned farmland. I used to drive it in high school when I wanted to sneak out without anyone seeing me. If I kept my distance, maybe I could see something without being seen. They knew I was there. I pulled onto the abandoned road just after sunset. Through the trees, I could see Ravenswood. It looked normal, too normal, like a movie set, like someone had copied a real town but didn't get all the details right. The streetlights flickered in perfect sync. Cars sat parked in the exact same spots I remembered from months ago. And then I saw the people. They weren't moving. They were standing still in the streets, hundreds of them, lined up in perfect rows, like mannequins in a store window, all facing the same direction, all facing me. I felt ice crawl down my spine. Then, at the exact same time, they started walking, not toward town, toward me. I threw my car into reverse, tires kicking up dirt as I sped the hell out of there. But as I did, something stepped out onto the road. I barely hit the brakes in time. My headlights illuminated a tall, thin figure standing in the middle of the pavement. Its limbs were too long, its fingers too sharp. Its face. It had no face, just smooth, pale skin stretched over an empty skull. I tried to swerve, but as I did, the thing snapped its head toward me. And I swear to God, it smiled. Not with a mouth. It didn't have a mouth, but I felt it smiling. I don't remember much after that, just that my vision went black, and when I woke up, I was back in my car, parked in front of my parents' house. The engine was off, the keys were in my lap, my phone was dead, and outside, standing in the front yard, were my parents, smiling, waiting. Final message. I don't know what's real anymore. I don't know if I ever left Ravenswood. I don't know if I ever could. But I do know this. The people in my town, they were never people. And now, I think they've made me one of them. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at my parents, the things that looked like my parents, standing motionless in the front yard, smiling, waiting. I didn't want to move, didn't want to breathe, because the moment I acknowledged them, the moment I made any kind of movement, I knew they'd come for me. And yet, my hands were shaking, my pulse was hammering in my skull. Every instinct in my body screamed that I shouldn't be here, that I had to leave before it was too late. But then, my father tilted his head, a sharp, unnatural snap of the neck, like a doll's head being twisted the wrong way. And I swear to God, his smile got bigger. The front door creaked open. My mother stepped forward, not walked, glided. She moved without bending her legs, her nightgown billowing around her like something was crawling underneath the fabric. She reached out, thin fingers twitching, curling, and in that moment, I finally moved. I turned the key. The engine roared to life. My mother's eyes snapped wide open, pitch black voids swallowing the whites, swallowing everything. Then she screamed, not like a person, not even like an animal, like a broken radio exploding with static, a screeching noise that shattered every nerve in my body. The entire neighborhood woke up. Lights flickered on in every house. Doors swung open, all at the same time. And from the doorways, people stepped out, or things stepped out. The entire town was awake now, and they were all looking at me, smiling, coming. I slammed my foot on the gas. My tires screeched against the pavement. The figures in the street didn't move. They stood perfectly still, waiting, watching, until the last possible second. Then they snapped their heads toward me in unison. My father's voice, but not his voice. Layered, distorted, warped into something that wasn't human. Come back home. I swerved. Something slammed against my windshield. A hand. Too long. Too many fingers. I saw the face. Not my mother's anymore. Not anyone's. Just stretched, stitched skin, pulled over an empty skull. Eyes like black holes. I turned so hard, my car almost flipped. Tires barely gripping the pavement. I tore through the town, through the back roads, not stopping, not slowing down. And in my rearview mirror, I saw them. Dozens, hundreds, lined up in the streets, standing motionless, watching me leave. And then, one by one, they turned and walked back into the houses, doors swinging shut behind them, like nothing had happened, like it was just another night in Ravenswood. The outside isn't safe. Either. I drove until I ran out of gas, didn't know where I was, didn't care. I pulled into a deserted rest stop somewhere in Illinois, sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the wheel. My brain was fractured. I had seen something impossible, and somehow I had gotten away. But then, my phone buzzed. Dead battery. It shouldn't have been on, but the screen flickered to life anyway. A new message. No caller ID. No timestamp. Just 3 words. You left. Why? I threw my phone across the car. My breathing was uneven. My body was shaking. This wasn't over. Not even close. The video that shouldn't exist. I don't know what made me do it. Curiosity. Desperation. Maybe I wanted proof that I wasn't crazy. But I picked up my phone. The message was gone. Like it had never been there. But there was something else. A video file. I knew I shouldn't watch it. Every cell in my body told me that whatever was in that video, it wasn't meant for human eyes. I pressed play. At first, it was just static, then grainy footage, security camera quality, a room I didn't recognize, white walls, fluorescent lights, and a surgical table in the center, the kind they use for autopsies, and then a body, strapped to the table. But the longer I looked, the more I realized it wasn't a body, not yet. It was still alive. I could see its chest rising and falling, could see its fingers twitching. Then, a figure stepped into frame, dressed in a white coat, surgical mask, gloves. But something was wrong with its hands. The fingers were too long, too sharp. It picked up a scalpel, and without hesitation, it started cutting. The thing on the table screamed, a sound so inhuman, so full of pain, that my vision blurred. I tried to pause the video, tried to look away, but my phone wouldn't let me. The figure peeled back the skin, not like a doctor, like a butcher. It ripped open the flesh with bare hands, revealing something underneath, something black and writhing, something that wasn't human. The thing on the table kept screaming, but as the figure pulled more of its skin away, as more of that shifting, inky black mass was exposed, the screaming turned into laughter, deep, distorted, like 100 voices speaking at once. And then the figure looked up, looked directly at the camera, and then at me. The screen glitched. The lost frame froze. A message appeared. "You were never meant to leave." I threw the phone. I couldn't breathe. I was shaking so badly, I thought I was going to pass out. Because I knew what I had just watched. It wasn't a video. It was a warning. And the worst part, the body on the table. I think it was me. End of part 4. I don't know how to stop this. I don't know if I can. If I disappear after posting this, just know they got me. I don't know how long I sat there. My phone lay shattered on the passenger seat, its black screen reflecting nothing. I didn't try to pick it up. I didn't need to, because I already knew. I wasn't alone anymore. I felt them before I saw them. A presence shifting in the dark, just outside the gas station's flickering neon glow. Shapes moving behind my car, behind the pumps, in the trees lining the highway. Watching, waiting. Their laughter was inside my head now, not in my ears, inside my fucking skull, crawling through my brain like a swarm of centipedes. It wasn't one voice. It was all of them. Every missing person from Ravenswood. Every face I had seen disappear over the years. Every neighbor, every classmate, all of them speaking at once. "You shouldn't have left." My fingers clenched around the steering wheel, so hard my nails split open. Blood dripped onto my jeans, but I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe, because suddenly, they were here. I looked up. The gas station's glass doors had swung open, though no one had touched them. The convenience store inside was empty. No clerk, no customers. But then, out of the aisles, out of the freezer section, from behind the fucking counter, they stepped forward, and my stomach turned to ice. They weren't people. Not anymore. Their bodies moved wrong, like marionettes with snapped strings, jerking and twitching with every step. Their faces were stretched too tight, like the skin didn't quite fit, their lips peeling back into grotesque, stitched-on smiles. Some of them were rotting, chunks of flesh missing, revealing blackened veins and raw pulsing meat underneath. Some had no eyes at all, just hollow sockets filled with something wet and shifting, something that looked back at me. And then, from behind the counter, something else crawled out. Not stepped. Crawled. It didn't have a face. Not at first. But as it pulled itself into the light, its flesh began to change. A ripple. A shudder. Like melting wax reshaping itself. And then I saw my own face staring back at me. Perfectly copied. The same eyes. The same nose. The same blood still dripping from my split nails. But its smile was wider. And when it spoke, its voice was wrong. "We only needed one of you." I don't remember starting the car. I don't remember hitting the gas. But suddenly, I was screaming down the highway. The figures in the gas station watching me go, standing in perfect, unnatural stillness. I was never supposed to leave. I don't know how long I drove. Hours? Days? I don't even know where I am anymore. But it doesn't matter, because I can't escape. No matter where I go, I see them. I see myself. Every gas station mirror, every security camera, every window pane I pass on the street. There's another me in there, not moving when I do, just watching, waiting. The last revelation. I tried to go to the police. I really did. I walked into a station in some town I didn't even recognize, hands shaking, blood dried under my fingernails. Told them everything. The missing people. The town that wasn't real. The things that weren't people. The officers just listened. Too still. Too quiet. Then one of them, a woman with dull brown hair and an empty stare, reached for something under the desk. A file. And she slid it toward me. I hesitated. But when I finally looked, it was my own fucking case file. Missing person. Deceased. Date of death. 6 months ago. 6 months ago. The day I left Ravenswood. I felt my stomach twist into something cold and black. We already have you. I looked up. The officer was smiling. Too wide. Too fucking wide. I ran. The final truth. I don't exist anymore. I know that now. I don't have a home. I don't have a name. I don't have a body that belongs to me. Because I'm already in Ravenswood. I never left. Whatever is out here, whatever's driving this stolen car, wearing this stolen skin, typing these stolen words, it isn't me. I think I died back there. I think I died a long time ago. And now? Now I think they're just making sure I don't come back. End of part 5. If you read this, please, never look for Ravenswood. Never try to find it. Because if you do, you might find yourself. I discovered a dark web forum where people sell family members. One of the listings was my sister. Alright, so before I even start, I need to make one thing clear. This story is 100% real. I know how that sounds, trust me. If I were reading this, I'd probably be calling BS too. But by the time I finish, you'll understand why I wish this was fake. So, for some context, I'm a 22-year-old college dropout. Not proud of it, but life happens, you know. I was living with my older sister, Mia, in a small apartment in Chicago. She was 25, had a steady job in marketing, and basically carried my lazy ass while I figured my life out. We were close. Always had been. Our parents were kind of a mess, so we relied on each other growing up. This all started about 6 months ago. I was deep into tech stuff, hacking, coding, all that nerdy shit. Not in a criminal way, just curious. I liked exploring things, seeing how stuff worked. One night, I was messing around on Reddit and found this post about accessing the deep web. Not the surface level deep web with old databases and forgotten websites. I'm talking about the real deep web, the illegal, untraceable, you shouldn't be here kind of deep web. Of course, I was intrigued. Who wouldn't be? So I followed a guide, downloaded Tor, set up a VPN, all that. I started browsing different .onion sites, mostly weird conspiracy blogs, fake hitman services, which I assumed were scams, and black market drug sites. Pretty standard for the deep web. But then I found something different. It was a forum. The URL was just a string of random letters and numbers, nothing recognizable. The homepage was simple. Black background, white text, no graphics. Just a single phrase at the top. Welcome home. I had no idea what the site was about, so I started clicking around. Most of the threads were locked, unless you had an invite code, but a few were public. The topics? Stuff like best methods for discreet disposal, auction strategies, and tracking insurance liabilities. It didn't make sense at first. I figured it was some weird role-playing thing. People on the deep web loved their creepy LARP shit. Then I found the marketplace. This is where things got really messed up. The listings looked like normal classified ads. Photos, descriptions, prices. But they weren't selling products. They were selling people. I don't mean human trafficking in the way you hear about it in crime documentaries. This was different. More personal. Each listing had a relationship label, like selling disobedient husband, 43 million, good condition. Selling deadweight son, 17M, hard to handle. Selling wife, 29F, no longer needed. I felt sick. This had to be fake. No way people were actually doing this, right? Then I saw it. A listing near the top, freshly posted. Selling sister, 25F, well maintained. The photo attached was Mia. I didn't move for a full minute. Just sat there, staring at my screen, my brain refusing to process what I was looking at. The photo was unmistakable. It was Mia, taken in our goddamn living room. She was sitting on the couch, wearing an oversized hoodie and sweatpants, holding a mug of coffee. The kind of casual, candid photo I might have taken on a random morning. The listing had more details. Age, 25. Condition, excellent temperament. Obedient but stubborn at times. Starting bid, $30,000. My stomach flipped. This wasn't a joke. Someone had taken this picture. Someone who had been inside our apartment. My first thought was that I was being pranked, but my gut told me otherwise. I scrolled down to the comment section, my hands shaking. User, Mr. Black 13. She looks perfect. What's her max capacity? User, the collector. Very interested. Any health issues? Allergies? User, no more names. Need delivery options. International possible. User, seller. OP. No known issues. PM for custom requests. Final sale tomorrow. Final sale tomorrow. I slammed my laptop shut and immediately ran to Mia's room. I don't know what I expected to find. Her tied up, missing, dead. But she was there, asleep, breathing softly, completely unaware that a bunch of sick freaks were bidding on her life, like she was a piece of furniture. I locked every door and window in the apartment, then grabbed the biggest knife from the kitchen. My mind was racing. Who the hell took that photo? I wanted to believe it was some kind of deep fake, but deep inside, I knew it wasn't. The worst part, the timestamp on the photo. It had been uploaded 2 hours ago. I didn't sleep. I sat by Mia's door all night, knife in hand, waiting. Every creak, every gust of wind made my heart slam against my ribs. I checked the peephole in our front door every 10 minutes, expecting to see someone standing there, waiting. But nothing happened. At 6 a.m., Mia's alarm went off. She walked out of her room, stretching, completely oblivious. I must have looked insane, sitting on the floor, dark circles under my eyes, clutching a knife like some kind of lunatic. Jesus, dude. You good? I wanted to tell her everything, show her the website, the listing, the comments. But what was I supposed to say? Hey, some strangers on the internet are trying to buy you. It sounded insane, even in my head. So I lied. I told her I thought I saw someone outside last night, and that we should be extra careful. Lock the doors, watch our surroundings. She shrugged it off, made coffee, and went to work like it was any other day. I didn't let her out of my sight. I followed her to work, watching from across the street like a creep. I sat outside the Starbucks she always went to, scanning every person who walked in, looking for anyone watching her. At noon, I checked the website again. The post had 16 bids. Highest bid, $70,000. My hand started shaking again. I clicked on the seller's profile. No real information, just a bunch of other listings, all closed. I clicked on one at random. Sold, Brother, 19M, minimal resistance. The comments were worse. User, happy buyer 12. Packaging was great. No issues. We'll buy again. User, keep it quiet. Had to discipline him a little, but he's adjusting well. I think I was about to throw up. These people weren't just talking about kidnapping, they were talking about ownership, like they were buying pets. And Mia was next. The break-in. That night, I barricaded the doors. I didn't tell Mia. I just said we were having lock issues and needed to be extra careful. I sat in the living room with my laptop open, refreshing the page over and over, watching the bid climb. $80,000, $95,000, $110,000. Who the hell was willing to pay 6 figures for my sister? At exactly 3:12 a.m., the power cut out. Every light in the apartment flickered off. My laptop screen went black. The hum of the fridge died. The only sound was my own breathing. I grabbed my knife. Someone was here. I moved toward Mia's room, stepping as quietly as possible. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought I'd pass out. As I reached for her doorknob, a soft creak from the living room. I turned slowly. The apartment was pitch black, but my eyes were adjusting. I could make out the furniture, the outline of the couch, but something was wrong. A shape near the window, tall, still, watching me. I gripped the knife tighter. "Who's there?" My voice barely came out. Silence. Then, movement. Fast. Inhumanly fast. The figure darted toward me, and I swear to God, for a split second, I saw his face. No mask. No disguise. Just a man. Smiling. I swung the knife, but I hit nothing. The moment my arm moved, he wasn't there anymore, like he had melted into the shadows. Then Mia's door swung open. She gasped. What the hell was that? I grabbed her wrist and yanked her into the hallway. We need to go. Now. She barely had time to process what was happening before I shoved her into the car. I didn't even grab my laptop. I just drove. I drove until we were out of the city, until we were surrounded by nothing but darkness and highway. Mia was shaking. Where are we going? I didn't know. I just knew we couldn't go back. The final bid, around 5 a.m., I pulled into a gas station. My phone had 0 bars, no Wi-Fi. I needed to see the website again, needed to know if the listing was still up. I borrowed a stranger's phone, logged in. The listing was gone. Sold. I felt like I was going to pass out. A new post had taken its place. Successful delivery. Enjoy. I turned to Mia, my mouth dry, my head spinning. She was right there, sitting in the passenger seat, alive, safe. Then I noticed something on her arm, a small dark mark, right below her wrist, a brand, like she had been marked. I sat there in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My eyes were locked on Mia's wrist. That brand, that small, dark symbol. It wasn't just a bruise, not some random mark from sleeping wrong or bumping into something. It was deliberate, precise, burned into her skin like a signature. My throat felt tight. What the hell is that? I finally managed to choke out. Mia looked down, frowning. What? She turned her arm, squinting at it in the dim gas station lights. She hadn't even noticed it. I grabbed her wrist, pulling it closer. The mark was small, about the size of a quarter, but it wasn't a shape I recognized. Not a letter, not a number, more like a symbol, a half circle with jagged lines running through it, like cracked glass. Mia pulled away, scowling. Jesus, what's your problem? You don't feel that? I asked, my voice shaking. She shook her head. No, it's just... Wait, what the hell? Her face changed. like she was just now realizing it shouldn't be there. I swallowed hard. Something had happened to her. Something I hadn't seen. Something I had no way of stopping. We sat in silence for a few minutes. The gas station around us was dead, empty, the kind of place you'd expect to see in a horror movie before everything goes to hell. I needed answers. I needed to know what that mark meant. I reached into my pocket for my phone, but it wasn't there. I checked my jacket, my jeans, the car seats. Nothing. I patted my pockets, panic rising. "Where's my phone?" Mia frowned. "You had it before, didn't you?" "I thought so." I ran a hand through my hair. "It must be in the apartment. Or maybe..." My stomach twisted. Maybe someone took it. That man, the one I saw in the apartment, the smiling one. Mia must have noticed my expression. "You're freaking me out," she said, her voice quieter now. I didn't answer. I turned, looking out at the empty road, the dark horizon stretching out ahead of us. Something was watching us. I could feel it. The phone call. We drove. I didn't know where, just that we couldn't stay in one place. My head was spinning, trying to make sense of what was happening. Somewhere outside of town, in the middle of nowhere, Mia finally broke the silence. "So, are you gonna tell me what the hell is going on?" I took a deep breath. I told her everything. The deep website, the listing, the bids, the comments, the break-in. By the time I finished, she was staring at me, her face pale. "That's not funny," she said. I didn't blink. "I'm not joking." She swallowed, looked down at her wrist again. "So you think someone bought me?" I gripped the wheel. "I think they already own you." She didn't respond. She just stared ahead, gripping her knees. I could tell she was trying not to cry. Then my phone rang. I froze. My phone. The one that had been missing. The one I hadn't seen since we ran. Mia stared at me. "What the hell?" I slowly turned my head. The sound wasn't coming from the car. It was coming from outside. I pulled over, my hands shaking. The road was deserted. No streetlights, no signs, just black trees stretching out in every direction. The ringing was coming from the woods. Somewhere in the trees, my phone was ringing. Mia grabbed my arm. "Do not go out there." I hesitated. Then the ringing stopped. Silence. And then, a new sound, a notification ping. My heart pounded. I turned the car off, sat there, listening. The night was silent, except for the faint buzzing of insects. Then, another ping, another. It was a text message. Over and over, Mia whispered, "We need to go. Now." I took a breath. My body was screaming at me to run, to hit the gas and never look back. But my hands were already moving, already unlocking the car door. Mia grabbed my wrist. Number no. But I was already stepping out. The woods, the night air was cold. The ground was soft under my shoes. The phone buzzed again, deep in the darkness. I walked forward. My breathing felt too loud. Every step I took felt like I was walking into something I wasn't supposed to see. And then I saw it. A small black flip phone lying in the grass. Not my phone. It buzzed again. The screen lit up with a new message. I bent down, my hands shaking as I picked it up. There was only one contact. No name, no number, just a blank entry. And the message read, "You stole our property. We're coming to collect." My vision blurred. I looked up, scanning the trees. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I turned to run back to the car. But then I saw something in the trees. Tall, thin figures, standing perfectly still, watching me. They weren't hiding. They weren't moving. Just standing there. Like they had been there the whole time. Like they had been waiting. The chase I sprinted. Branches whipped at my face, but I didn't stop. The phone was still clutched in my hand. I could hear footsteps behind me. Fast. Too fast. I burst out of the trees, Mia already screaming in the car. I barely made it inside before I slammed the door shut, hit the gas, and tore down the road. The figures didn't follow. They just stood there, watching. But as we sped away, my hands gripping the wheel so hard I thought I'd break it, Mia turned pale. "Look," she whispered. I followed her gaze. In the rearview mirror, on the back window, a handprint. Not just any handprint. The same symbol that was burned into Mia's skin. The moment I saw that handprint, something inside me shattered. It wasn't just the fact that it was the same twisted symbol burned into Mia's wrist. It was that it hadn't been there when we got in the car. Someone touched the window. Someone had been right there, watching, waiting. I drove faster, gripping the wheel so hard my fingers went numb. The gas station lights faded behind us, swallowed by the endless stretch of highway. We didn't talk. We didn't breathe. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the blood pounding in my ears. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, expecting to see those figures standing in the road, but they never appeared. That was worse. They weren't chasing us. They didn't need to. They were already ahead of us. The motel. I don't remember how long we drove. 2 hours, 3. Time didn't feel real anymore. At some point, we reached a rundown motel on the outskirts of a nameless town. Neon lights buzzed overhead, casting an eerie glow over the cracked pavement. I parked and turned to Mia. "We need to check your wrist again." She hesitated, then slowly unrolled her sleeve. I almost threw up. The symbol had changed. Before, it had been a simple, burned-in mark. Now, it had spread. The line stretched outward, curling around her arm like veins. The skin around it was red and irritated, like an infection crawling under her flesh. Mia gasped and yanked her arm away. What the hell is happening to me? I didn't have an answer. We stumbled into the motel, paid in cash, and locked ourselves in the room. The walls were thin, the air smelled like mildew, and the beds looked like they hadn't been cleaned in years. But it didn't matter. We just needed to be inside. Safe. Mia sat on the bed, hugging her knees. She looked so small, like a kid again. "I don't feel right," she whispered. I knelt in front of her. "What do you mean?" She rubbed her arms. Like I'm not supposed to be here. Like something's pulling me." I swallowed hard. "Pulling you where?" She shook her head. "I don't know, but I keep hearing something." That made my skin crawl. "Hearing what?" She hesitated. "A voice." My mouth went dry. "What's it saying?" She finally looked at me, her eyes glossy. "It's saying it's time to go." The camera. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those figures in the woods, standing still, staring. Around 3 a.m., I got up and checked the window. The parking lot was empty. Nothing but flickering streetlights and an old vending machine humming in the dark. But something felt wrong. I sat on the bed, scrolling through my thoughts, trying to figure out a plan. Then I remembered. The motel had security cameras. I didn't care how shady this place was. There had to be footage of us arriving, footage of what was behind us. I grabbed my hoodie and stepped outside. The night air was thick and heavy, pressing down on me like a weight. The front desk was empty, but the door was unlocked. I slipped inside. The security monitor sat in the corner, displaying a live feed of the parking lot. My car was right where I left it, but something was wrong. I squinted at the screen. There was a shadow, not a person, not a figure, just a dark shape, almost like something was crouched behind the car, shifting, moving just out of sight. Then, the feed glitched. For half a second, the screen filled with static, and when it cleared, there was a man standing directly in front of the camera, not moving, not blinking, smiling. My blood turned to ice. The feed glitched again, and he was gone. I didn't think. I just ran. The door. I sprinted back to the room, my heart hammering against my ribs. I reached the door, fumbled with the keycard, shoved it into the slot. The light blinked red. Wrong key. I tried again. Red. I checked the room number. 206. My stomach dropped. It wasn't the same number from before. I looked around, realizing I didn't recognize anything. The walls were the same peeling yellow. The carpet was the same stained brown. But this wasn't our hallway. I wasn't in the right place. I turned back to the door, panic rising in my chest. I knocked. Mia? Silence. I knocked harder. M-I-A. Then, from the other side of the door, a single soft knock. My breath caught in my throat. That wasn't Mia. I stepped back. The hallway felt smaller. The air felt thicker, like the walls were closing in. Then the knocking started again. Faster, harder, louder. I turned and ran. The walls were wrong. I don't know how long I ran. I must have taken a wrong turn because suddenly I was outside. Except it wasn't the motel parking lot anymore. I was standing in a long, empty road. No buildings, no cars, no signs. Just a single street lamp buzzing overhead. And in the distance, barely visible in the dark, a figure, tall, still, watching. I took a step back. The ground felt soft, like I was standing on something that wasn't really there. Then the street lamp flickered. For half a second, everything went black. And when the light came back, the figure was closer. My body screamed, "Run!" but my legs wouldn't move. I could only stand there, frozen in place, as the light flickered again. Darkness. Then, it was right in front of me, and this time, I saw its face. It wasn't a man. It wasn't even human. Its skin was pale, almost translucent. Its mouth stretched into a wide, jagged grin, filled with too many teeth. And its eyes were hollow, empty sockets, blacker than anything I'd ever seen. It raised one hand, long bony fingers curling toward me, and whispered, "She's already ours." Then, I woke up. The final message. I was back in the motel room. Sweat poured down my face. My chest heaved. Mia sat on the bed, staring at the wall. Her eyes were wide, empty, like she'd been sitting there for hours. I sat up. "Mia?" She didn't answer. Then my phone, the one I lost, buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up with shaking hands. A new message. No sender, no number, just a single line of text. Final transaction completed. Thank you for your purchase. I turned to Mia. Her mouth twitched into a small, unnatural smile, and in a voice that was not her own, she whispered, "It's time to go." Mia sat on the bed, her face frozen in that unnatural smile. Her lips curled just enough to show her teeth. Her eyes didn't blink, didn't move, just stared straight ahead at the wall like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. My fingers dug into the bedspread. I wanted to shake her, scream her name, do anything to pull her out of whatever this was. But I couldn't move, because deep inside me, some primal part of my brain was whispering the truth. That wasn't Mia anymore. The moment she whispered, "It's time to go," I felt it. The room got colder. The air felt thick, wrong, like something was pressing against my skin, crawling into my lungs. And then, she turned her head, not in a natural way, too slow, too controlled. And when she looked at me, her pupils were gone. Just empty, milky white voids stretching deep into her skull. I stopped breathing. She grinned wider, and then, in a voice that sounded like hundreds of voices layered together, she whispered, "Why are you still here?" The other MIA. I jumped off the bed so fast I nearly fell. My chest was tight. My legs felt weak. Mia, or the thing wearing her face, watched me, tilting its head. "You look afraid." The words came out wrong. Not just the tone, but the rhythm, like it was testing the words, learning them as it spoke. My hands were shaking. "What the hell are you?" She smiled, standing up. The way she moved sent pure animal terror down my spine, like something mimicking human movement, but getting it slightly wrong. She took a step toward me. I backed up, hitting the motel door. My mind was screaming, "Run, run, run," but my body was locked in place. She stopped in front of me, close enough for me to smell her breath. And then she spoke again. "You took her away." Her voice was softer now, sad, like a child explaining something obvious. I swallowed. "What?" She blinked. "She was already purchased. You stole her. Now we had to make do." My stomach dropped. Make do. I was going to be sick. "Mia is still in here, you know," she continued. "She's just resting." I shook my head. "You're lying." She giggled, a sound that sent pure dread down my spine. "Would you like to talk to her?" I stopped breathing. She leaned forward. Her face was so close to mine, I could see every pore on her skin. Then she opened her mouth, wider than should have been possible. The skin at the corners of her lips split open, tearing like wet paper. Inside her mouth, deep in the blackness of her throat, I saw something moving. A hand, fingers twitching, reaching outward, pushing against the inside of her throat like someone was trapped inside. Then Mia's real voice came out, muffled, desperate. Help me." I grabbed the lamp from the nightstand and swung. The base cracked against her skull with a sickening thud. She didn't fall, didn't flinch, didn't even blink. She just stood there, smiling, the gash in her head already closing. Then she whispered, "Wrong choice." And the lights went out. The things in the dark. I didn't think. I just ran. I fumbled with the door, ripping it open, nearly falling into the hallway. The motel was completely dark. The buzzing fluorescent lights above flickered weakly, barely pushing back the blackness. I sprinted down the hall, my pulse slamming in my ears. My only thought was, "Get out." But as I turned the corner, I saw them. At the end of the hallway, figures, standing in the dark, tall, wrong. Their faces weren't faces, just smooth, blank skin where eyes and mouths should have been. They turned in perfect unison, and then they started walking toward me. I backed up, heart hammering. My foot hit something soft, a body. I looked down, the motel clock. His mouth was wide open, his face frozen in a silent scream. His eyes were missing, not gouged out, just gone, like they had never existed. Then, a hand grabbed my ankle. I screamed, kicking hard, breaking free. I ran for the stairs, took them 3 at a time, nearly breaking my neck. My car. I had to get to the car. I burst through the lobby doors. The parking lot was empty, except for one person, Mia. She stood in front of my car, waiting. I skidded to a stop. She smiled. "Let's go home." My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely pull out my keys. My brain was screaming at me to run in the other direction, but I forced myself to move forward. I climbed into the driver's seat, heart pounding, gripping the wheel so hard I thought it would snap. Mia slid into the passenger side. The second her door shut, I peeled out of the lot. We drove in silence. I didn't dare look at her, because I knew. It wasn't Mia sitting beside me, the last message. We've been driving for hours. I don't know where we're going. She hasn't spoken since we left the motel, but every now and then I feel her watching me, not like a person watches, like a hunter watches prey. My phone buzzed just now. A single new message. No sender, no number, just 2 words. Transaction complete. And when I glanced in the rearview mirror, for just a split second, I swear to God, I saw my own face smiling back at me. But I wasn't smiling. I wasn't even there. A hacker sold me a recording from a sunken submarine. The crew was screaming about something with too many eyes. All right, I don't even know where to start with this. I wasn't planning on posting this anywhere, but I can't keep this to myself anymore. I've been sitting on this recording for weeks, and every time I listen to it, I get this horrible sinking feeling, like I'm not supposed to have it. I don't even know if I'm in danger for telling you all this, but if something happens to me, just remember, I warned you. So, a little background. I'm not some crazy hacker or anything. I'm just a guy who's always been fascinated by the deep web, not the dumb buying hitmen or ordering mystery boxes kind of deep web, but the real stuff, the lost information, the weird files, the kind of things that feel like they shouldn't exist. It's like digital urban exploring. You find things people were never meant to see. Anyway, a few months ago, I was in this deep web forum where people trade old, corrupted, or classified audio files, the kind of stuff that's been erased from official records. Usually, it's just nonsense, like old radio transmissions, Cold War era broadcasts, weird voicemails from unknown numbers. But then, I found this post. For sale, classified audio file, black box recording from lost military submarine, lost transmission. Warning, disturbing content. It had 0 replies, no upvotes, no comments, nothing. Just sitting there, like nobody dared to touch it. The user who posted it had a weird, glitchy username, something like K1L9-XD3, and their profile was completely blank. No post history, no avatar, just this one listing. Now, I know better than to throw my money at every sketchy listing on the deep web, but something about this one pulled me in. I don't know. Maybe it was the way "lost transmission" was written in all caps, like a warning. Maybe it was the fact that nobody else had even acknowledged it. I messaged the guy. I kept it simple. Just, how much? He responded almost instantly. $500 in crypto. No refunds. No questions. Now, normally I wouldn't drop that much cash on something like this, but something in my gut told me this wasn't just another hoax. I didn't even try to negotiate. I paid the guy, and within seconds, he sent me a download link. That's when things got weird. The moment I clicked the link, my internet cut out. My entire apartment went dark. Wi-Fi, phone signal, everything, like my place had just been unplugged from the world. For a solid 2 minutes, I just sat there in the pitch black silence, listening to my own heartbeat. I even started thinking I'd just gotten myself hacked. But then, just as suddenly as it had gone out, my power came back on. The download was finished. The file was called ssv-748_blackbox.mp3. No metadata, no timestamp, nothing. Just a single, ominous audio file sitting on my desktop. I hesitated, took a deep breath. Then I hit play. I put my headphones on. Something about this felt wrong, like I was about to hear something I wasn't supposed to. but I couldn't stop myself. I pressed play. At first, there was nothing, just silence. I thought maybe the file was corrupted, but then, faintly, I heard it. This low, rhythmic beeping, the kind you hear in submarines, like sonar pings. It was distant, almost muffled, like the sound was trapped under miles of water. Then, voices. They were frantic. Men shouting over each other, heavy breathing, the sound of someone sobbing. The microphone must have been somewhere near the control room, because I could hear the crew talking over the radio, their voices crackling with static. Not responding, sir. We lost navigation. Depth controls failing. What the hell was that? Did we hit something? No impact detected. Hull integrity stable. Then, this horrible, metallic screeching sound ripped through the recording, like something enormous was scraping against the outside of the submarine. It was loud enough to make me rip my headphones off for a second. When I put them back on, the panic had escalated. Port side cameras are down. External sensors are malfunctioning. Christ, it's dark out there. I can't see a damn thing. Then, the captain's voice. He was trying to stay calm, but I could hear the strain in his words. All hands, brace for emergency ascent. I repeat, emergency ascent. Someone yelled. No! No, we can't go up. We can't go up. It's up there. What the hell did that mean? More metal groaning. The submarine was creaking, like the pressure was shifting. Then, something slammed against it. Hard, like a depth charge going off right next to the hull. The whole crew screamed. A new voice came through the radio, but it wasn't from inside the sub. It was some kind of automated distress signal, repeating over and over in this robotic monotone. Mayday, Mayday, SSV 748, requesting immediate rescue. We have... Then static. Then something else. A sound that didn't belong. At first, I couldn't tell what I was hearing. It was layered beneath the voices, hidden under the distortion. But as it grew louder, my skin crawled. It was a wet, gurgling noise, like someone struggling to breathe through a throat full of water. But it wasn't coming from a person. It was too deep, too wrong. And then, a voice. But it wasn't human. I swear to God, it spoke. The words were garbled, slurred, like they were being dragged out of a mouth that didn't belong to anything alive. I rewound the recording, listened again. It was saying something, repeating the same phrase over and over. You see us. You see us. You see us. The voice was layered, like a dozen people speaking at once, but not in unison. Some syllables dragged, others clipped short, like a corrupted audio file. Someone on the sub started screaming, full-blown, blood-curdling terror. It's inside. Oh God, it's inside. Gunshots. A rapid burst of automatic fire, deafening in the confined space. Then more screaming, more chaos. Someone was choking, gurgling, then a sickening wet pop, like a watermelon splitting open. Then silence. For a full 10 seconds, nothing. Just the soft, distant beeping of the submarine's instruments. I thought the recording had ended, but then I heard breathing. Slow, wet, not human. And then a whisper, so close to the mic that I felt it against my ear. Too many eyes. The recording cut out. I ripped my headphones off. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. What the hell did I just listen to? I checked the file info. No date, no location, no metadata at all. Just a blank, nameless recording of something that shouldn't exist. But here's the part that won't leave me alone. The way it whispered at the end. The breath against my ear. I don't think it was part of the recording. I think it was in my room. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept hearing it. That whisper, that slow, wet breath, that voice that wasn't human. Too many eyes. At first, I tried to convince myself it was just an audio trick. You know how sometimes recordings have layers you don't notice until you're really paying attention? Maybe I'd imagined the whisper. Maybe my brain was just freaking out after hearing something that disturbing. But then, I saw my reflection. It was around 3 a.m. I had my laptop open, playing some random YouTube video, trying to distract myself from what I'd just heard. The screen was dim, and my room was almost pitch black, except for the faint glow of my monitor. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my eyes, trying to shake off that crawling feeling on my skin. That's when I noticed something wrong in my screen's reflection. My bedroom door was open. I hadn't opened it, and standing just outside the doorway, in the dark hallway, was a figure. No, not a figure. A shape. It didn't have clear edges, like it wasn't fully in focus, like my brain couldn't process what I was looking at. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My entire body locked up, frozen in place. I just stared at the screen, at the reflection of something that shouldn't be there. Then, in the silence, I heard it again. A breath. Wet, slow, and too close. I slammed my laptop shut and turned around. Nothing was there. The hallway was empty. The door was still closed. I sat there, heart hammering, gasping for air like I'd just been drowning. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. Had I imagined it? Was I just sleep deprived? Then, my laptop turned back on by itself. The screen was black. No desktop, no apps, just a single blinking text cursor. Then, words started appearing. "You see us!" I slammed the lid shut again. I don't even remember standing up, but suddenly I was across the room, breathing so hard my chest hurt. I yanked the power cord out, held my breath. Silence. Then, I heard my laptop's fan whir back to life. The screen lit up again. New words appeared. "We see you!" I threw my laptop across the room. It hit the wall so hard the screen cracked. The power flickered. The fan let out a dying whine. And then, nothing. Total darkness. The silence in my apartment was so heavy, I could feel it pressing against my ears, like the whole world had gone still, waiting for something. Then, somewhere outside, a car alarm went off. Loud, sudden, like the universe had just remembered to keep making noise. I stood there, shaking, my back against the wall, my hands clenched into fists so tight, my nails dug into my skin. I stayed like that for hours, just waiting, listening, but nothing else happened. Eventually, as the first hints of morning light started bleeding through my curtains, I worked up the courage to pick up my laptop. It was dead, completely fried. I tried turning it on. Nothing. I checked the battery, the power cable. It was like something had reached inside and gutted it. But when I opened it, the cracked screen showed one last frozen frame. The last words it had typed. Too many eyes. I didn't go to work that day. I didn't do anything. I just sat in my apartment, blinds shut, phone off, trying to convince myself that what had happened was just my imagination. But I knew it wasn't. And the worst part? I still had the recording. Even though my laptop was destroyed, I'd copied it onto a USB before I listened to it. Some part of me, some stupid, curious part of me, had wanted to keep it. I should have gotten rid of it right then and there, but I didn't. Instead, I did something worse. I enhanced the audio. I should have burned the USB. I should have thrown it into a fire, crushed it, buried it, anything but what I actually did. But curiosity is a disease, and I was infected. I couldn't let it go. I needed to know. The next night, I drove to a 24-hour electronics store and bought a cheap second-hand laptop. I paid in cash. No receipts. No paper trail. Paranoia had dug its claws into my brain, and I wasn't about to let this thing connect to any of my usual devices. I drove back home, locked my doors, closed my blinds, and booted up the laptop. No Wi-Fi, no accounts, nothing personal. Just an empty machine and a single USB drive sitting in the palm of my hand. I hesitated. I could still stop. I could still walk away from this, pretend none of it ever happened. But I didn't. I plugged in the USB. The folder was still there. ssv-748_blackbox.mp3. I right-clicked the file and opened it in an audio editor. If there were layers in the recording, hidden sounds buried beneath the distortion, I wanted to hear them. I started isolating the background noise, boosting frequencies, filtering out the static. That's when I noticed something strange. There was a pattern in the static, a rhythmic clicking noise. At first, I thought it was just interference, but when I slowed the audio down, my stomach dropped. It was Morse code. Somebody, or something, was transmitting a message beneath the screams. I ran it through a translator. The result made my entire body go cold. It sees. It hungers. We let it in. I was gripping the edge of my desks so hard my knuckles turned white. My mouth was dry. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. Who sent this message? The crew. Were they trying to warn someone? Or was it something else? I kept going. I isolated more layers. Voices started emerging from the static. Whispers, low and distorted, overlapping each other like a chorus of drowning men. Then, I hit something new. Something I hadn't heard before. A deeper recording, buried beneath everything else. This one wasn't panicked. It wasn't screaming. It was calm. I boosted the volume. A man's voice crackled through the speakers, recorded in that same suffocating underwater atmosphere. It was the captain. Expedition log, SSV-748. Final entry. A long, ragged breath. Then, if anyone finds this, we are lost. But not in the way you think. My entire body tensed. We weren't supposed to come down this deep. The mission was a lie. The coordinates were pre-selected. They knew what was here. Static swallowed his voice for a moment. Then, it wasn't a distress signal. It wasn't an SOS. We didn't find it. It found us. Something creaked in the background. A deep, groaning pressure, like metal being crushed under an impossible weight. It speaks without sound. It watches without eyes. We are not the first. We will not be the last. More static. The recording was breaking down. But then, one final shuddering breath. Do not look at it. Do not listen. If you hear it, it already knows your name. If you see it, the audio glitched. A horrible, garbled noise exploded through my headphones. A shrieking, warping sound, like a corrupted file trying to force itself into words. Then, a new voice. Not the captain's. Not human. You looked too long. My screen flickered. The audio kept playing. But now, I heard something else. Something in the room with me. Wet breathing, right behind me. I turned around. There was a shadow in the corner. Not a person, not even a shape. Just absence. A place where light refused to exist. And within it, eyes. Too many eyes. Watching, blinking, opening and closing in slow, unnatural rhythms, like they were trying to imitate human expressions, but didn't understand how. Then, it smiled. Not with the mouth, with the eyes. I ran. I don't remember leaving my apartment. I don't remember getting into my car. I don't remember anything except the feeling of being watched. I drove for hours. I don't know where I was going. I just needed to be somewhere else. Eventually, I ended up in a McDonald's parking lot, hands shaking, heart pounding. The sun was coming up. People were going about their normal lives, but I wasn't normal anymore. Something had followed me. Something had seen me, and I had looked back. I didn't go back home. I couldn't. I knew that if I stepped inside that apartment again, if I even opened that door, I wouldn't come out. Something was in there, and it was waiting. I sat in that McDonald's parking lot for hours, gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. People came and went. Normal people, living normal lives, ordering their Egg McMuffins, checking their phones, chatting about work and the weather. They had no idea what was underneath them. I did, and now it knew me. I forced myself to breathe. I needed to think. What the hell had I uncovered? A recording from a lost submarine, a doomed crew that had heard something in the abyss, something that spoke without a voice, something that had too many eyes. And now it was here. Somehow, some way, I had let it in. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts with numb fingers. I hadn't told anyone what I'd been doing. Who the hell would believe me? But there was one person I knew could help. Caleb. We'd met years ago on a deep web forum, sharing encrypted files, swapping theories about lost government experiments. He was an ex-military tech guy, the kind of person who could break into classified networks for fun. If anyone could make sense of this, it was him. I called. The phone rang once, then twice, then a third ring, a fourth, a fifth. No answer. I hung up and tried again, straight to voicemail. I stared at the screen. Cold dread curled in my gut. Caleb always answered. Always. I opened my texts. The last message I'd sent him was 2 days ago. Something stupid about a conspiracy subreddit. No response. I switched to our private chat on an encrypted app. I froze. His last message wasn't from days ago. It was from 30 minutes ago. And all it said was, "Don't look at it." My hands went ice cold. Caleb knew. He knew what was happening. He knew what I'd found. And now, he was gone. I checked the time. His message had been sent at 4:13 a.m. I called him at 4:45. That meant that when I was sitting in this car, shaking, staring at my hands, trying to make sense of everything, he was still there. And now, he wasn't. I turned the key in the ignition, heart pounding. I had to go. I had to get out of this parking lot, out of this city, out of wherever the hell this thing could see me. The engine didn't start. I turned the key again. Nothing. The car was dead. The streetlights above me flickered. The people around me kept moving, ordering food, drinking coffee, living their normal, blind, oblivious lives. But something shifted. Something changed. The air grew heavy, thick, like the weight of the ocean pressing down on my skull. And then I saw them, outside the McDonald's, standing among the people, mixed into the crowd, but not moving like the rest. 3 of them, tall, too tall. Their faces were wrong, too smooth, too stretched, the skin pale and waxy, their mouths just slightly too wide. But it was the eyes that made my stomach drop. They weren't human. They weren't right. There were too many. Not just 2. Not even 3. They had clusters of them. Little black, glistening pits, blinking out of sync, wet and oily, and watching me. They didn't speak. They just stared, and then one of them smiled. Not with its mouth, with the eyes. They all smiled. I yanked the door handle and ran. I didn't think. I just moved. Out of the parking lot, into the street, sprinting past honking cars and shouting pedestrians. My heart beat a thunderstorm in my ears. I ran until my lungs burned, until my vision blurred, until I didn't know where I was anymore. When I finally stopped, gasping for breath, I was in an alley behind some rundown Starbucks. The street was empty. I turned around. Nothing. No smiling things. No too many-eyed shadows. No whispers in my ear. I was alone. For now. I stumbled into the Starbucks, trying to act normal. Bought a coffee with shaking hands. Sat down in a booth, away from the windows, pretending to check my phone, like I was just another regular person. Then, I opened my text. Caleb's message was gone. No trace of it. No notification. No proof he ever sent it. I tried calling him again. His number was disconnected. I felt sick. Something took him. Something erased him. And now it was watching me. I don't know what to do. I haven't gone home. I don't think I can. The USB is gone. I left it in my car. But when I went back, the car was empty. The recording, the laptop, the evidence, all of it. But I don't need the file to hear it. It's in my head now. That whisper, that voice that doesn't belong to any living thing. Every time I close my eyes, I hear it. Every time I look at my reflection, I see them. The too many eyes, the too wide smiles, waiting, watching. I can feel them getting closer. I don't think I have much time left. But if you're reading this, if you're seeing these words, it knows you now too. It's already looking, and if you see it, don't look back.